Welcome to the Ethiopian Bible. You've probably seen the claims online. The Ethiopian Bible is the oldest Bible.
For centuries, we've trusted the Bible as complete. But what if something was left out? Mel Gibson has reignited curiosity by pointing to the Ethiopian Bible.
A thing that comes into it from having read the book a few times.
Guarded for generations by monks in remote mountain monasteries. These monks prayed in isolation, preserving ancient texts the world rarely saw.
This is a rare Ethiopian Orthodox Bible manuscript, handwritten in Ethiopia's sacred liturgical language.
Now, as these writings resurface, they hint at a different vision of the end times, one that challenges everything we thought we knew. Could the missing pieces finally be coming to light?
If you liked the video, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and stay with us for more.
Hidden Ethiopian Bible truth. For centuries, the Western world has held a single version of the Bible as the definitive word. But what if that version was incomplete? What if, hidden for nearly 2,000 years, there existed a more ancient, more complete scripture containing teachings so radical they were deliberately buried? Mel Gibson has brought this question to light by pointing to a forgotten guardian of faith, the Ethiopian Bible. Preserved by the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, this canon contains over 80 books, texts like the Book of Enoch, Jubilees, and the Discalia, that were once widely circulated among early Christians. These were not fringe writings, they were central to early belief. Yet, they were excluded from the Western canon by powerful authorities in Rome. The question that echoes through history is simple. What was cut out? Why was it hidden? And who decided the rest of the world didn't need to know? The answer lies in the 4th century, at the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. While Christianity was spreading across the Roman Empire, Ethiopia embraced the faith contemporaneously, but in complete isolation from Rome's religious political machinery. The Council of Nicaea wasn't just a theological meeting, it was a political act designed to centralize church authority. Writings were excluded not merely for doctrinal differences, but because they empowered ordinary people with direct divine truth, and, more dangerously, because they predicted corruption within the church itself. Ethiopia refused to accept this Roman-imposed canon. Protected by geography and a fierce independence that resisted colonization, Ethiopian monks began a sacred mission. For nearly 2,000 years, they painstakingly copied manuscripts by hand, preserving the full corpus of scriptures in Ge'ez, an ancient language that few scholars outside Ethiopia could read. While the Western world remained unaware, Ethiopia became the guardian of a complete, unaltered tradition. Now, as these texts are finally being studied by Western researchers, their contents are shaking the foundations of conventional theology. The end times, as described in the Ethiopian Bible, are not the familiar narrative of external cataclysms and a singular antichrist. Instead, they describe a series of spiritual conditions unfolding inside humanity. This reframing changes everything. It moves the end times from a distant future catastrophe to an ongoing spiritual reality that we are experiencing collectively and individually right now. The Ethiopian texts describe this final age in 4 distinct stages. The first is the Age of Forgetting, where humanity gradually stops seeking truth. Truth becomes inconvenient, and the quiet erosion of spiritual inquiry sets in. This is followed by the Age of Spectacle, where noise and entertainment replace wisdom. Civilization loses its capacity for stillness, drowning deep thought in constant stimulation. Then comes the hardest stage to recognize, the age of the false shepherd. Here, corrupt leaders arise not from outside the faith, but from within religious institutions themselves. They use sacred language and faith to justify the accumulation of secular power and wealth. Finally, if these stages are left unchecked, humanity enters the Great Silence. This is the most dangerous moment, when human hearts become so cold that the connection between heaven and earth grows thin. Even genuine seekers can barely feel the divine presence. But the Ethiopian Bible doesn't just diagnose the condition of the world, it reveals the inner battle each individual must face. It reinterprets the 7 seals of Revelation not as cosmic events, but as internal barriers within the human heart. There is the seal of comfort, which avoids truth because it feels disruptive. The seal of pride, where certainty halts learning. The seal of fear, where we ignore truth to feel safe. The seal of distraction, which leaves no room for stillness. The seal of false community, where echo chambers prevent real truth from entering. The seal of false mercy, where forgiveness becomes an excuse to avoid growth. And finally, the most dangerous, the seal of religion, where sacred rituals and words mask a lifeless faith. Breaking through these seals does not lead to external signs of power. It leads to becoming the spark of awakening the world needs. This awakening is urgently needed because the texts also warn of a final empire. Described in the Discalia, this empire is not defined by a nation or army, but by a vast, subtle system of control. Its power lies not in chains, but in comfort, bread, and entertainment. It creates an illusion of freedom so convincing that people willingly trade their spiritual sovereignty for distraction. The text blesses those who see the cage and still choose love and truth despite the false abundance. In response to this empire, the Ethiopian Bible preserves a final prophecy of Jesus, omitted from the Western canon. It speaks of the final witness. This is not a supernatural sign or a single prophet. It is a generation of ordinary people who rise up in the darkness and refuse to be silent. They face ridicule and erasure from the powerful, but their voices are heard in the hearts of those ready to listen. Truth, the prophecy reminds us, does not need public platforms. It thrives in the readiness of the listener. The suppression of this prophecy was deliberate. It threatened the very architecture of institutional power, revealing that the greatest danger to spiritual control is not external rebellion, but an awakened populace that can recognize false prophets arising from within their own churches. So why does this matter now? Because the conditions described in these ancient pages are no longer prophecy, they are news headlines. The age of forgetting, the spectacle, the rise of false shepherds, and the creeping great silence are not future events. They are the specific, recognizable conditions of our present era. We are living inside the spiritual war that the Ethiopian Bible described long ago. Yet this tradition does not leave us in despair. It ends with a profound promise of hope. The end is not the end of the world, but the end of the lie. The final empire, no matter how subtle, will crumble, and those who choose love and truth amidst the deception will not be lost. They will be recognized not by crowns of authority, but by the scars of their perseverance. For 2 millennia, Ethiopian monks have waited in the highlands, preserving these truths by candlelight, awaiting a generation ready to hear them. They were waiting for a generation that could see the empire for what it is and still choose to awaken. They were waiting for a generation that would refuse to let the great silence fall. The question is not whether that generation exists. The question is whether you, watching now, have the courage to be part of it. The buried history has been unearthed. The truth has been preserved. The only thing left is the choice. Will we remain comfortable in the cage, or will we become the spark? The choice is yours alone, but know that you do not make it in isolation. Every heart that chooses to see, to resist the quiet numbness, becomes a thread in a tapestry woven by those Ethiopian monks who sacrificed everything so that these truths would survive. They believed that the preservation of the text was meaningless without a people willing to live it. So now, the torch passes. To hold this knowledge is to accept a sacred responsibility, to awaken, to speak, to love in the face of silence. The spark has always been you.